All right, welcome back. Episode 3 of
Episode
Sent
3.
to the Office. I'm just gonna throw the cards out on the table right off the bat. I just wasn't super happy with that last episode.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of feedback, and we've talked about it since, but we want everyone to know that we're aware of it.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
We got positive feedback from the educators
Right. Mm-hmm.
that are listening, but then some people,
Yeah, they
who
were like,
listen
"Thanks for the professional development, dickheads."
right? Yeah, like we're not
No,
going through
actually,
that this
they
week,
did
right?
say
Right.
it was cool.
Like they're not, falling asleep
Right.
the whole week long to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But then I did hear from some people that said, you know what, you might want to mix in some more stories,
Make
and some,
fun of the fat guy some more or something like
yes,
that, right?
yes. But so it's a work in progress,
Yeah.
and so we're gonna kind of roll with that. So,
Yeah, and we're
yeah.
just kidding when we say if you don't like it to go yourself.
Yeah,
That-
we literally do not want
No.
you to literally do that.
No, absolutely not.
No.
Now, real quick though, we were talking a lot about the first day of school and everything, and we're not going to talk too much about school today.
Right,
But
right.
I just want to thank you for coming and talking to my students.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't done that in a while, and
Yeah.
usually I kind of get into a rhythm, and time just flies by. I never really got into that rhythm, so I'm a little out of practice.
Yeah, it was good though.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, I
like,
had a
think-
nice young lady come to me afterwards and say that it impacted her, and
Yeah.
I guess that's what we're looking for. And plus, Paco, weaved in through the rows of students, and he did his job, which
Yeah.
he's awesome. So,
Yeah, Paco.
oh, well, I'm not supposed to mention Paco because we didn't have permission to bring. Paco was not there.
No.
He
no.
was not
the
there.
Paco puppet that I brought.
Yes, the Paco puppet, the real Paco dog.
We
was-
actually have a puppet story. It's not. We're actually organized.
Right,
this
right.
time.
We're not gonna
kind
talk-
of, but
Right.
we
The
gotta tell
real
the puppet
Paco
stories.
dog was not at
No.
school yesterday.
Nope,
Not at school.
not at all.
So,
So
yeah, we're here and we're ready.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we know we need to talk about some things that people can relate to.
Yeah.
And that's the way I introduced you to the class. I said maybe some of you know what it's like to, and I went through all the or not all, but the big highlights. And
Right.
it was drawing them in. So for the audience, for today, maybe there's someone out there listening that at some point has been naked in a bathtub, helpless,
Could
unable
be.
to get out.
Could be.
I bet
Maybe.
I got their fucking attention now,
Maybe,
Joel.
maybe.
That's what we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
All
That's right.
Brought
it,
this
it
on,
happens.
Chip. You
It
brought
happens
this
to the
on.
best of us.
We'll
and
get to that, but
we'll
yeah,
get to that. But
that's what you brought
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Is we're going to talk at some point about Joel naked.
in a bathtub, and it wasn't my fault.
They will listen for an hour now just to
Probably.
they'll
Probably.
fast forward. Did they get to it yet?
Right. Well, I just came from a fantasy football draft, which I'm sure there's 5 to maybe 10% of the people listening who really give a shit about fantasy football.
Fantasy,
And
fantasy football, though,
Fantasy
real
football,
quick.
right.
I just have to. Is it like when you used to play like Dungeons and Dragons with
Exactly.
your friends or something
It's
like that?
exactly like that.
Like,
Except for nerdier.
You get little. Okay.
It's
all
like,
right,
yeah.
I'll stop.
No,
I'll
you can
stop.
tell that I came because I'm wearing my colors. I've got the Green Bay Packers vest on. And Dan, I don't know if you're aware of this because you're of average build, but
Average.
You're-
What's that even?
you're of average build. You're like an average. Okay, yeah, you can.
I'm okay.
I gotcha.
I've been told many times that I'm above average.
in some ways you are, but as far as build goes, you're an average guy. But the vest is almost exclusively a fat guy thing,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you're aware of that. But
I
if
wasn't
if
at
you,
all.
yeah, right. If you look, especially in the warmer,
But I don't have any vest. And
Well,
I'm
you're just
average.
You're illustrating my point. The vest here is something that 90% of the time is worn by someone who might be just a little bit above average in size, maybe the O word, obese.
Oh.
And the reason
So why? What? I don't understand. How does the vest make that better?
I'm going to explain that. The
Okay,
vest,
all
what the
right.
vest does for you, it allows me to hide a bit what's going on under here. Okay.
Okay.
Also, another thing that you may not know is that guys like me, we like to wear an undershirt tucked in because
I do too.
you do.
I don't like the way my jeans feel against
Yeah,
my
I don't like
skin,
that either.
so I like to.
Right, but there's another reason for that is because I'm sure that you've seen it. A bigger guy in public drops
Sounds
his
really
phone,
weird saying it out
drops
loud.
his keys, bends down, not wearing an undershirt tucked in, and all of a sudden you see what?
Ass
Yep.
crack.
We don't want that. We don't want that. So,
So the undershirt prevents that.
prevents that.
If it's pretty long, I'll bet.
Responsible big guys like me, responsible, lifelong big guys.
No one wants to see that.
No, I don't want to show that. That's embarrassing. So I always wear the shirt tucked in, no matter what. I never go without an undershirt tucked in. Never.
Yeah.
But the vest allows me to, kind of hide what's going on in here. So I just want you to be aware of that when you're out in public. Kind of make a mental note when you see a vest.
I'll notice it now. I'm
You're
sure.
gonna notice it now. And there might be guys
just
out
for
there
the-
who listen to this
Yeah.
and they might be in denial about it, but I just want them to embrace it because
You know
it's
what?
real.
I'm gonna say something. I think you look good, Joel. Like
you, Dad.
from your shoulders up.
From right
I'm
here
just
up.
kidding.
From right
No,
here up.
Dude, you got the best calves ever. One
do
of these
have-
days you'll have to just put your calves.
I
up.
do have.
They almost look weird though. Like
Yeah,
they're-
well, they
they're
do.
So they look like you had some kind of implant.
They're
in you or
concerning.
something.
They're concerning, and I have not done a single calf raise in my entire life.
Huh.
But I see guys at the gym
And
that
I've
are
never
working
really
those
done
calves,
too many
and
bicep curls. And
you've never done any. That's hard to believe.
I gotta stop.
Well, I had a fantasy football draft. I think I did okay. However, and because you don't know anything about fantasy football, it is a mortal sin in fantasy football to draft a player who's already been drafted. You get made fun of in some leagues. So let's say I want to draft Aaron Rodgers, but somebody already took him. Then you get made fun of. You get bullied, Dan. You get bullied, and it happened to me 6 times.
Like you're supposed to know. And
Well, you're
you
supposed to
did
keep
something.
track, and you're supposed to
Oh.
cross names off of your list, and it rarely happens to me. It happened to me today 6 times, and what I'm going to tell you is the
You're
same.
gonna have to explain your hearing too.
I've explained it. I explained it to the rest of the
On
guys.
This,
Yeah.
People don't even.
When people draft, I often either don't hear what they're saying, or I mishear them, and I cross off the wrong guy. So it was my fault, but it's not my fault. I wasn't this. I didn't choose to be this way. I didn't choose to have this hearing
you
problem that
could
I
have
have.
made them feel like shit by.
I
putting
tried to.
disability
I tried
card,
to.
Like, what do you mean try?
I tried. I said, hey guys, I have a disability here.
Yeah, that's.
And
that's
the last
boom.
thing that I need as a disabled American is your derision, your scorn,
Boom.
your mockery.
That didn't stop. 'em.
Nope, they just laugh more.
I like these guys.
Yeah, they're pretty good guys, but some of it is my fault, Dan.
Yeah.
Because 25 years ago, now I'll go into detail about my hearing problem in later podcasts, but I have my hearing problem is mostly from birth, but I have done some dumb things that have
Oh.
aided or not aided, actually led to more hearing problems. About
And he's not talking about like listening to loud music like we all did. I think I kind of know what you're talking about.
yeah, I did a little bit of
Why
that.
do they say don't put anything sharper than an elbow in your ear?
Yeah,
Why would
well,
they even say that?
I don't know why,
Because
but
there's no way.
yeah, I couldn't do that. But I can tell you that there's a reason for that because about 26 years ago, I was working at PACE, which is a kind of a school-based program for students who, at-risk students basically, but they were all adjudicated for a variety of issues. And at the time, I worked with a guy named Daryl Butcher, who you might be aware of.
Yeah. I was just
Southeast
talking
Polk
to
guy.
Daryl the other day.
Yeah,
He's
Daryl
awesome.
guy. Yep,
He's
good
going
guy.
to help me a lot with my class. We're not going to talk about school, but I'm super excited about what Daryl
Really?
and I have cooking.
Daryl actually helped you in some way.
Well, time will tell.
Okay,
Time
we'll
will
see.
tell.
Well,
I know. I have faith.
about 26 years ago, I had only been out of college for about a year or so, and I was living with a guy. We shared an apartment, and his name was Matt Jurgens, and he great guy, but yeah, he was a bit of a knuckle dragger. Okay,
Wow.
and I say that affectionately, and I know that he's probably not listening anyway. So, but I love Matt Jurgens. But we went out on a Thursday, okay, and closed the bar down because I was 23, 24, and then we went out and had a few more beers. So I didn't get back in until maybe 3 or 4 a.m. and I was tanked. And I just want to share or reinforce to the young people listening who used, maybe former students, I was of legal age and I was doing nothing illegal. I was just going to bars.
Doesn't make it right.
Doesn't make it right. So 3 or 4 in the
Just like
morning and I was pretty loaded and I went to sleep and I got up 3 hours later to go to work. And I got in the shower and I did my normal routine, which was at the time was to put a couple of Q-tips in my ears and just kind of let them sit there.
At the same time, you put them in?
At both ears, one in each ear. I might have alternated, but the point is that I have very, very small ear canals, Dan. It's an issue.
Hold on. Why did you just leave them in there to soak up the
To
water?
soak up water because I have, like I said, I have tiny ear canals. So
I use them all the time, but I've never just like.
well, I don't do that anymore. I can tell you that right now.
All right, I'll shut up.
So I've got them sitting in there, and I'm brushing my teeth. And bear in mind, it's only about 3 hours since I had my last drink.
Yeah.
So I'm
You're
still
still
feeling it.
intoxicated.
Still there. So I got done brushing my teeth and went to grab the Q-tip, and because my hand-eye coordination was a little
Which is
bit
hanging
off,
out your ear.
just hanging out, when I went to grab it, I banged it into my head. Okay. There was approximately this much of the Q-tip. I know. Hanging out of my head. Okay. So immediately I knew I had done something very bad. And when I pulled the Q-tip out of my ear, it was like I was holding a seashell. Are you going to gag? Are you going to gag?
No.
Okay.
I was picturing like something coming out with it or something.
Yeah, well, there was, blood and maybe some pus.
That's pretty gross.
Pus? Does that bother you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I finished getting ready for work, and I went to work, and I was sitting there in our little cubicle, and Daryl was right there, and and I'm still, feeling the effects, and I'm putting my finger in my ear, and I'm looking, and there's blood all over my finger, and I finally tell Daryl what happened, and he cannot stop laughing.
No, like, oh my gosh, let's get you
No,
to the
because
hospital.
he's a son of a bitch. He doesn't care. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. And so he finally did encourage me to go to the clinic, and I didn't even know if I had medical insurance at the time. And, the doctor said, yeah, you have a broken eardrum. And I said, well, what do you do about that? He said, nothing.
Yeah.
You just let it heal, and you'll have scar tissue on your eardrum, and it will, diminish your hearing a bit. So
Yeah.
for years and years, as my hearing in both ears has gone bad, this ear was always a little bit worse than the other one because I have, right.
Because I remember you always saying I got a good ear and a bad ear, and I always tried to remember that.
And now
especially
this ear is
when you were my boss.
when I was your
really
boss.
wanted to remember which ear was the
Right.
bad one.
So you can say whatever you
I
want.
just wanted to make sure.
Right.
Oh, spoken the right one. Anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
But it's a challenge, man, and I'm not going to kind of go into all the hearing stuff. That's for later. But I'm very thankful that I have people in my family who understand this because I don't think I could live on my own. For example, most people have smoke detectors in their house, and when there's they go off, they make a high pitched noise, which I can't hear
Right.
because I'm deaf in that tone. And I remember a few years ago, the last episode we talked about Jerry,
Yes.
my old dumb dog, who was an awesome dog, but he was not bright.
No.
A few years back, because I have to get up and use the restroom several times at night. Okay,
Have you talked to a doctor about
I have, and they just said that's just the way it is, bro. You know how doctors are.
Yeah.
They could.
They might need to.
They've done that. Yeah. They've done that, by the way. I was not expecting it the first time, by the way. It was,
Woohoo!
yeah. So,
What do
yeah,
you mean you weren't? It was a surprise
yeah,
attack?
he just said, I think it's time that we do this. Bend over.
Oh.
And I said,
I thought you meant you were like, whoa, what was that?
no. And I was like, and then I tried to think of all the funniest lines I could think of, like from Fletch, you use the whole fist here, Doc, and all that stuff.
What'd you
and
come
then
up with?
right after the appointment, after he got done doing his, I played basketball.
You just used 2 fingers.
I don't know how many you used. I don't know. It was uncomfortable, Dan. Let me tell you that it was
I
uncomfortable.
think we need to just start this over.
No, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I mean, the whole podcast. Like,
You think so?
I don't know.
No, I think people can identify with this. But I went to play basketball right after he did the, and I never played better. There was like I was faster and I don't know whatever it was he used on his fingers to
Maybe
lubricate
had a
them.
couple lines of coke before he came.
I
to the
don't know, but
examination
whatever
or
it was.
something.
But anyway, so go back to a few years, and I get up, and at this point, I guess it was more like 7 or 8 years ago, because the boys at this point, I'm pointing over here where the people can't see. My 2 boys shared a bedroom, okay, at this time, and
Aww.
yeah, because they were little fellers. And I got up, and when I got up, Jerry, who normally, when I say normally, every single night for years, would lay on a dog pillow next to my wife. But that night, he was standing in my doorway, peering around the corner. So his whole body was in my doorway, but he was peering down the hallway. Okay, well, I thought that was odd, right? So I go to the bathroom, do whatever I need to do. And when I come out, he's not in the doorway anymore. He's in the bedroom, the boys' bedroom, and he's doing the same thing. Whole body hidden in their room, head poking out, peering down the hallway. Okay, well, Dan, I don't know if you are aware of this, but I have some anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
At that moment, were you wishing you had exercised your Second Amendment and you were ready to just rock
I kind
and
of
roll?
did. I kind of did. Yeah, I'm not armed. I'm not armed.
Oh, you shouldn't say that. Now they know.
No,
I
yeah,
don't know who
I
they
wasn't
are.
then, but I am now. Oh, I'm armed to the
Strapped
teeth.
big time
I'm
now,
armed to the
bitches.
teeth now. So I thought, well, that is really weird. Okay, so then I lay down in bed, and now I'm warned. Okay, I'm laying there, and I'm like, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So finally, after 10 minutes, I get up, and Jerry is still in the boys' room, peering down the hallway, nervous as hell.
You gotta think someone's in the house.
I did. And so I went downstairs. I had a little flashlight. Of course, I got halfway down the stairs and realized my faithful dog, Jerry, is not following me.
He was dumb and a coward.
He was. And I feel bad about this. I called him a pussy.
Oh.
I said, Jerry, you're being a pussy right now. You need to come down here. He did not come down here. Now, if Paco would have been around,
Oh.
he would have come down. But Jerry, no.
Ooh.
So I went downstairs and looked all downstairs and went to the basement, came upstairs, laid down in bed, and by then my adrenaline was going because I'm
Yeah.
thinking there's somebody in the
Something's
house,
wrong.
or there's somebody trying to get in the house.
They've been there and now they're gone. Who knows?
Maybe. So I laid there, and it was about 3 in the morning. I laid there till about 6 in the morning until my alarm would normally go off for me to go to school. Okay. The alarm goes off, and I'm just laying there, and I sigh really loud. And Marna is like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Good Lord, Marna, I've been up half the night. Jerry's been acting like a weirdo. I thought there was somebody in the house. I went downstairs to check, and he's being just a big pussy because he will not go. He wouldn't go down and check it, and he's just standing in a doorway looking down the hallway. And Marna's half asleep, and she said, well, that's because the smoke alarm battery is low and is chirping. And I'm like, it's doing what? She's like, you know when the smoke alarm battery gets low and it makes that crazy chirp like once
Yeah.
every 20 seconds? Well, Jerry can hear that. Oh, well, me. I can't.
Whole
Thanks for
night-
telling me that.
Whole night just wrecked.
All night, and I was wrecked the next day. Thanks, Jerry, for doing that.
Jerry might have saved your life. What if that was real? You know?
Right, because the smoke alarm is a higher pitch than I can hear.
Yeah.
It's out of my range now. I'm deaf.
Right.
But I guess I had forgotten that a low battery and a smoke alarm made a little chirping noise. But
Maybe you should put on your calendar to change your batteries and stop
Maybe.
blaming on the dog.
maybe. Or get a better dog. I got a better dog.
So you were talking about, I don't want to miss it because I promised it to him, about how you had blood dripping out of your ear and Daryl laughing at you.
Yeah.
A friend laughing at
Right.
you when you're just kind of...
I would have laughed at him. I probably would have.
a pretty good segue into the
Right.
naked in the bathtub story. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, and it happened about the same time. It was basically probably within a few weeks of each other.
Wow, that's a rough week.
Yeah, it was a rough week. I lived in an apartment on the south side with Matt Jurgens, and he was this big.
Same guy from before.
Same
right?
guy from
Okay.
before. He was a special ed teacher at McCombs Middle School, and at the time, I was the in-school suspension teacher at McCombs Middle School. My first real job, terrible job, but anyway. So we went to the weight room with another guy, and we decided, because I was in my early 20s, he's a little bit older, we're going to burn out our triceps. So we did skull crushers. You've done
I know
skull
what
crushers.
Skull crushers are.
Okay. And we
They
did
might not though.
okay, skull crushers are when you take one of those curl bars that are bent and you lay with your back on a bench.
Oh, I thought it was something else. I'm
And
just kidding.
and you are extending the bar upwards and
Tricep.
work this tricep right here. Well, we decided we were going to do like 10 or 11 sets of it, just ridiculous stuff. Okay, now at the time, I was in better shape than I am now, but it still was not a good move. And so I got home and I was exhausted, and we did other stuff too. And so, squats and all that.
Yeah, but those burnouts build up like a lot of.
Oh yeah, I had so much lactic acid in my
right?
arms.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I decided to go take a bath because I thought a nice warm bath would help my muscles. So we lived in an apartment, and I got into the bathtub. Now this bathtub had a pretty high wall. Actually, it was not your normal apartment bathtub because I couldn't get into a regular one anyway. Honestly, a regular bathtub, I can't
Oh,
get in
because
there.
it's too small.
There's a term called water displacement, Dan, and I don't know if you know what that means because you're not really a science guy.
I do.
So I got into the tub and I was soaking in the warm water, and I'd been in there about a half an hour or so, and I was ready to get out. Well, I tried to push myself. I couldn't do it. I had no strength in my arms to push myself out of the tub,
and you're just naked in the tub.
well, how else do you take a bath, Dan?
Did you ever try like rolling over to the other side?
I thought
You
about that
could've
because
drowned,
I could not get over. The wall was so high I couldn't get over it, and so here I am thrashing about. It kind of reminds me of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas when the lawyer is in the tub and I don't know if you remember that book, but anyway, it's
though.
an
Oh,
obscure.
I love that book.
It's an obscure reference, but when Hunter S. Thompson throws the radio in with him,
Yes,
it's really
yes,
a big
yes,
grapefruit.
yes,
He's
yes.
thrashing about. Well, that's me. I'm trying to get out in any way I can. So after 10 minutes of trying to get out, I start yelling for my roommate, Jergs. Jergs! So he comes in there, and Jergs is a big goofball, man. I mean, he's just a big.
A lot of name calling on jerks.
I know. I love Jergs. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he comes in, he goes, "Hi, Shooty." I said,
Did he know right away that
he
you just-
kind of knew what was going on. I said, Jerks, hey, man, can you help me get out of here? Shooty, are you stuck in the bathtub? I'm like, yeah, man, the water's cold. And he's like, yeah, it looks like the water's cold. I'm like, stop looking at that, I mean, because he's a creeper.
Man.
And come on, man, can you? Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'll help you out. Hold on just 1 second. So he leaves the bathroom and he goes out in the hallway, and I hear his voice go, "Yeah, Joe. Hey, man, it's me, Jerks. Yeah, you got to come over here and
Oh
see
my
this.
God.
You got to come over here and see this." And I'm like, "Jerks, are you calling someone?" And he just comes in here, "Hi, Shooty," and he just loved it. Just thought it was the funniest thing ever, And so he milked it for about 10 minutes or so, but eventually, did the double Danny
Yeah.
Glover, Mel Gibson, Lethal Weapon 3 off the 1, 2, 3, and we get out of the tub and
Embraced.
it was well, maybe I was relieved, frankly. So I may have just to make you feel uncomfortable.
All your good friends, that you can think of, I feel like they would have all done the same thing. Like, you're not helping your buddy out.
No,
right
no,
then. Like,
no.
he's okay. He's
Right.
not dying.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
We need to save him.
Right,
for
right.
just a second.
Hi,
We're so lucky
Shooty.
We didn't have these back then, man.
Oh, he would have definitely taken a picture,
Oh,
and
for
there's
sure.
nothing I could do about it.
Nope.
There would have been nothing I could do about it. Yep, just flop. Yeah, it took me days to feel normal again. It was bad. It was really bad. So,
Okay, so I did want to give a shout out though. We had a professional development.
Okay.
This last week, the students' first day was Friday, but I thought it was really cool. We did some diversity training, some
Okay.
diversity awareness, how to bring that into your lessons, and then we talked a lot about our internal bias, that whether you're aware of them or not, which I
Right.
think is a big deal
Right.
right now, because we talk about how we live in the age of information, you know, because everything's at your fingertips. I think it's more like we live in the age of you can confirm whatever bias you feel like you need
Sure
to
you can.
confirm.
Sure you
know?
can.
Like any controversial thing, like why are guns good? Why are guns bad?
Right.
You know, it's
Whatever
you're
you
gonna-
believe, you can find a
you'll get
bazillion
those
websites
stats and
finding
everything.
finding data to support your
I don't know how I got
narrative.
off on that, but
No, the professional development. I mean, I just this week I was reading a little bit about Brown versus Board of Education.
oh
Okay.
yeah.
Which was 65 years ago, and and most people know, but that was the landmark Supreme Court legislation that desegregated public schools. Okay, and most people kind of know that, but I dug a little bit deeper into it because it was interesting to me, and the family in Kansas who initiated the lawsuit, they just didn't understand why this white school that was 3 blocks away from their house was off limits.
Right.
And their school was 2 miles away, which she had to walk 3 blocks and take a bus and then take a different bus to get to school. So they started this, this lawsuit. And it kind of ended up not the way they intended. And I researched this a little bit because the legislation ended up being the language in it indicated that black schools were inferior to white schools, and that is not what the Brown family intended, because they were proud of their black schools and they thought it was great. They just thought it was weird that they were told where to go to school. But anyway, it kind of reminded me because that was 1954, and 25 years later I moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. When I was about 11 years old, 5th grade.
Yeah.
And even though 25 years had gone from Brown versus Board of Education till the time I lived there, it was like
Wouldn't have
no
known the
time had
difference.
passed in Hattiesburg.
Wow.
Okay. Because I went to a school, Eaton Elementary School, that is, I think they just closed it down. And I moved into that school, and I was the 3rd white kid in the entire school.
Wow.
And I was the only white kid in my class.
What'd that feel like?
I'm
sure
honest,
it feels like what?
yeah. Well, keep in mind that I had been moving every few months, and so I had that kind of in my head anyway. Of this is weird. Here I am in a new school. I don't want to get to know anybody because I'm going to move soon. But it was kind of weird because I don't recall any black teachers in the school. I had a white teacher in my classroom. And that was one of the that I learned this week. That was one of the unintended consequences of Brown versus Board of Education, is that while black students were allowed to move to white schools, as these white schools expanded, they did not hire these black teachers from the black schools. They hired more white teachers. And so it was it made me remember that, because I just remember how
It makes sense though. Like would lead to why we don't have enough of diversity in our
Right.
curriculums. You
Right.
know? I mean,
Right.
I don't know.
right.
I don't
well,
know anything.
and it also reminds me of the years when I was an administrator, and we would have a teaching opening. We rarely had a minority candidate. And, the theory is that I learned while I was reading is that Brown versus Board of Education had a long-term effect on African Americans as far as them getting into education negatively. So when I look back at 5th grade in Eaton Elementary School, and I'm the only white kid in the class, and I have a white teacher, and because most of my education had come from Iowa, I was miles ahead of where they were academically. Within the first couple days, I had taken some tests. It was very clear that they were stuck way back here, and and so I just thought it was going to be like normal. I would sit off by myself, and I'd go to the library, and I'd read books all day, which is fine with me. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
But it was so weird that this teacher spent so much time with me, and even at the age of 11, I remember thinking, "Why are you spending time with me? I don't really need your help." You know, I think I got whatever you're teaching. I get it. We learned it in third grade back in Iowa. So
I'm thinking he was aware of his bias. I don't know.
maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. So yeah, it just kind of made me, think of that. And I just remember, we'd go out to recess and, here for some of these kids in my class, I was the only white kid they'd ever spoken to.
Wow. So you're kind of like a rock star.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't think of it that way. I remember going out to recess and, these kids, boys, would come up to me and they would grab my arm and they would squeeze it and they would watch it turn white and then back to whatever
man.
color. I don't know if you know that if you squeeze your arm, the blood displaces and then it comes back and
Yeah.
whatever color you are, peach or whatever it is. And so we had these experiences, and
Yeah.
and I'm 11, and at the time I was living with my grandmother and grandfather. Grandma was a 6-pack of tall boys of Schlitz, drunk every night,
Wow.
and Grandpa was a proud racist.
Really?
And we lived in this little cracker box house on Southern Avenue, dirt poor, and I slept on the floor. And I just remember so distinctly we would sleep on the floor, and there was a little separation between the boards on the floor, and you could kind of, at night, you could kind of hear things kind of moving around under the house.
Rats. Bet it was rats.
Probably rats. But so, yeah, it was just it kind of reminded me of that, and I don't know if they've come much further because I haven't been to Hattiesburg in 38 years.
I like the hand touch, like the curiosity of it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It was interesting, and I remember I made a friend. His name was JoJo, and he was a nice kid. And we went up, and we were being rascals, and we had pocket knives. And my mom did not want me to have pocket knifed in, but I kept it a secret. And we went up to the school.
You always got to keep your shank a secret.
You got to keep it in your prison wallet, bro, so nobody knows where it is.
Which wallet?
Your prison
You
wallet.
need my ID or something?
What do you got there, Jules?
Anyway, go on.
So we went up to the school after school out. School was out, and we were going to carve our initials in a tree with our pocket knives, and I just it folded up on me, and it went deep into my finger and nearly cut my finger off. And of course, I couldn't go home and tell my mom that because she would be pissed.
Yeah.
So I went to JoJo's grandmother's house, who lived a block away, and she poured turpentine on it, Dan,
Oh.
which is not in your normal first aid kit.
No.
Not in the first aid kit. She said it would kill anything in there that's not supposed to be in there.
Yeah, I'm sure it did, including
almost
like
me.
healing flesh that's trying to
Right.
coagulate or something.
Right.
I don't know.
So put a Band-Aid on it. A week later, finally my mom notices, Joel, you've had a Band-Aid on your finger for a long time. What's going on? Take that off. I took it off, and my finger was up to here. And we didn't have medical insurance. So Mom, started squeezing down my finger, and all this gangrene and stuff would,
Right now.
came out. Is that too much for you, Dan?
No.
Is that too much
I
for
play
you?
it up a little bit, but it's weird. I can
Right.
gut a deer and everything, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's something like human stuff that
Yeah, that
grosses
bothers
me
you?
out. I don't know why.
So it just made me remember that. It was an interesting time. I don't think I was there more than about 5 or 6 months. And,
Yeah.
but
It's
it
an
kind of made me
experience,
remember
though,
that.
it's like I had guys over last night for the fish fry that I invited you to that you didn't show up to. But
Because I was busy.
yeah, we were talking about one of them. He works for Principal, and he'd been to India for work, and I had been to India when I worked for Dell. If I ever told you that I worked
You worked for Dell? I had no idea.
Anyway, we were talking about how that's an experience that a lot of Americans would benefit from.
Right.
That experience that you had is a very original. I
Yes.
mean, like,
Yes.
yeah, that's
And and I don't know how it affected me, but it affected me.
yeah.
I don't know how. So, well, Dan, I think we should look at our emails because we have an email.
We do.
Remember, listeners, if you have a question for Dan or I, a question about the podcast, or a question about life choices or relationships, please send your question to tremendousfatass@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get some traction. And so I have this email here from a listener I'd like to read, and then we can.
Is it a good one? I don't want to.
It's pretty heavy,
I
man.
don't take criticism well. Like
No,
that.
no, it's not a criticism.
I'm gonna.
It sounds like she needs
like-
some advice. And,
Oh, I'm good at that.
Yeah, so if you're
I can
ready.
do that, yeah.
Okay. It's a long email, and I'm going to kind of maybe add it just a little bit. But the listener wants to know how she can help her sons avoid being terrible men. Okay, which is right up. That's
Okay.
something interesting to me. They've suffered a lot of loss, not writing for sympathy, but the details surrounding the situation are important. One woman, 37 years of age, with 4 sons, aged 19, all the way down to 4.
Okay.
Not much family around, and the family that she does have has their own issues with drugs or alcohol or maybe living on the street. So not much family support. She says these boys literally have no direct family except me, their mom, and it has been this way for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Father is not in the picture much except for the huge milestones like graduation. The father hasn't attended a single school conference, purchased any school clothes or a school lunch. No help with anything really. Not financial, no emotional support, nothing. He just picks him up 1 to 2 times a month, and usually when they're with him, it's not quality time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip down here. As their mom, I've tried my best to give them certain things that sons would need from a dad, like fatherly advice, trying to take them to do boy things. Basically, to make a very long story short, I am wanting to know what I can do now to help the younger ones to feel more comfortable around other guys. She didn't realize how the isolation and lack of positive male influence would harm my oldest, the 19-year-old, while in high school. He wouldn't try out for sports, take classes that other young teen boys typically would, like wood shop or welding or whatever, even though he really wanted to. So he still struggles, can't take criticism, awkward around others, things like that. So it's very hurtful for her as a mother to see that. She wants what's best for her boys. No amount of trying ever really touches these boys' sense of security, self-esteem. How can I do better with the other ones? Is there anything I can do for my oldest now that he's grown?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. I think that it's not necessarily unique that she sees this in her boys. I think all men, to a degree, feel the way her boys feel, and it's just when a boy is growing up and doesn't have a fatherly figure, how is he going to learn what being a man is?
Right.
He's going to learn it from society, which
Right.
means music, movies,
Sports,
yeah, and
teachers, role
Yeah.
models.
so you learn that being a man means you're a big, tough guy, strong, athletic dude. You never show your emotions, because you don't want to be a sissy or whatever. You need to have sex with a lot of women. Sexual conquest is
Right.
a big part of it.
Right.
You need to make a lot of money and be successful. I mean, it's this.
Right.
this
There's a
laundry
checklist for
list.
being a man.
Right, and you're never enough on that. It's never there
Right.
because it's all.
Right.
So the problem might be also is when you say you're doing things that you think a father would do, you might, without knowing it, be kind of reinforcing that. I
Yeah.
think the best thing we can do is be honest that
Yeah.
that it's okay to be insecure, like
Right.
and I don't. Yeah, that's
It's a tough one. I mean, it sounds like she's kind of describing, a little bit the Disneyland dad, the concept of the dad that comes around once or twice a month and picks the kids up and they have a great time for a day or two. He's not responsible for taking care of the kids, not responsible for laying any rules down, no consequences if then he dumps them back in the lap of the mom and then she has to be the bad guy. And so it's a gradually increasing problem.
Yeah, and I'm
And-
sure they have that anger,
Sure.
that you
right.
talked about
Right.
in one of the previous.
And sometimes these boys, and it doesn't sound like her oldest did this, but sometimes these boys kind of naturally gravitate toward positive role models, male role models. And it doesn't sound like her oldest 19-year-old has done that, and she's concerned about that. And the only really thing I can really say is that he's still really young, and there are still opportunities for him to find that positive male role model that he maybe can imprint. It could be a boss or whatever. Unfortunately, he didn't find that in school, and maybe he didn't really feel like he needed that in school.
Yeah.
But it's pretty natural, and we've seen this in our careers. We've seen these boys who don't have a consistent male in their life.
Yeah.
They're yearning for it, man. They are trying to find it. And so
I would recommend that. Who's the guy that wrote the book you recommended?
Joe Ehrmantraut.
Yeah, he's got a TED Talk that's
okay. Joe Ehrmantraut wrote Season of Life, and it's kind of about coaching high school boys, but it's much more than that. And it's one of the best books I've ever read about how to build men for others, how to build boys into men who serve others.
Yes.
And I know you have used that book with your students because a lot of our students, is this 19-year-old, growing up without a consistent male role model.
Yep. And see, my students, what we do sometimes mirrors what, like I've gone to a head doctor. What's the right word? I was just
therapist, Dan?
Yeah, therapist.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was certainly well after the age 19.
Yeah,
and
right.
It helped me a lot.
Sure.
So,
and that's also that's always good recommendation. But
recommend.
yeah, patience is still, the 19-year-old still has plenty of time. Like you said, just be honest with the other ones and just say, look, I'm trying to be a mom here and I'm doing the best I can, but there's lots of things that you can be doing to put yourself out there and expose yourself to a variety of people that might be a good role model to you.
Yeah, and the sooner they realize that what being a man really is not those things.
Right.
It's very liberating.
It is.
And with that will come the confidence and the good feeling of knowing you're a man.
Right.
And you know why.
Right.
I tell my students, like, being a man is when your baby's colicky and it's 3 in the morning, your wife has the flu, and you got to be at work at 7 in the morning, and it's time to step it up.
It looks a lot different than it did when we were younger. So
anyway,
no, that's I really appreciate the question, and just want to encourage any other listeners to email in tremendousfatass@gmail.com, and we'll try our best to give some good advice. So I think we've come to the point where
I think
I have to tell you to yourself, Dan.
No, you don't. No, it's if you can go yourself.
Okay.
So I'm happy with this one.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Sweet.
So
okay.
All right, so episode 4 will be coming out sometime next week. You've got time to send in your questions or comments. Feedback is always appreciated. And in the meantime, have a great week.
Love you, brother.
Love you, buddy.